What happens when a woman with nothing left to lose uses her final breath to save a life? And that life belongs to the son of the most feared man on the continent. She was dying, frozen and hunted, an outcast with no name. He was a king, bound by duty and an iron-fisted law. When Alpha King Theron found her unconscious body shielding his lost heir, he was forced to make a choice. But that choice unraveled a conspiracy that threatened his entire kingdom and ignited a fated bond that neither of them was prepared for. The ice was a predator. It didn't just bite, it gnawed, seeping into the raw, open gashes on Ilara's back and legs. Each breath was a razor blade in her lungs, the air in the northern wildlands too thin, too cold. She was dying. She'd accepted it. Ilara had been running for 3 days. 3 days since her alpha, Alistair of the Shadowfang pack, had decided her latest mistake, dropping a platter of hot food, was worthy of a public correction. The correction had lasted an hour, and when his beta, Marcus, had finally pulled him off, Ilara knew this was the end. If she stayed, the next correction would be her last. So she ran. With nothing but the thin tunic on her back, she fled into the blizzard, choosing the clean, impartial death of the forest over the brutal, personal death at Alistair's hands. She was an Omega. In the rigid, cruel hierarchy of the Shadowfang pack, that meant she was less than dirt. She was a punching bag, a servant, a scapegoat. She was 22 years old and had never known a single day of kindness. Her legs finally buckled. She collapsed against the frozen trunk of a pine, her body too weak to even shiver. The world was fading into a peaceful, snowy white. "It's over," she thought, a strange relief washing over her. No more pain. A sound cut through the howl of the wind. A sharp, terrified yelp. Ilara's eyes cracked open. It wasn't the sound of the wind or the snap of a branch. It was a cub. Through the swirling snow, she saw them. 2 grey, mangy wolves, rogues, starved and desperate, were circling a small, silver-furred cub that couldn't be more than a few months old. It was backed against a rock, snarling with a bravery its tiny body couldn't possibly support. Something inside Ilara, an instinct she thought had been beaten out of her years ago, sparked. It was the one thing Alistair had never been able to destroy, a flicker of defiance, a rage against the strong preying on the weak. She knew what she was doing was suicide. She was half dead. They were 2 adult males. But she also knew that if she did nothing, that cub would be torn apart. And the thought of sitting by, even in death, while another creature suffered, it was unbearable. "No," she whispered, the sound stolen by the wind. Pushing off the tree, Ilara stumbled forward. Her body screamed in protest, every nerve ending on fire. The rogues turned, surprised by the sudden appearance of new, albeit pathetic, prey. Their lips curled back, revealing yellowed fangs. Ilara didn't have fangs. She didn't have claws. The abuse and starvation had left her too weak to even attempt a partial shift. She was just a woman, bleeding out in the snow. But she had a rock. As the first rogue lunged, Ilara drove all of her remaining 110 pounds into a downward swing, clutching a sharp piece of granite she'd grabbed from the snow. She aimed for the eye. She missed, but the rock connected hard with its snout, shattering cartilage. The wolf howled, a wet, sickening sound, and recoiled. Its partner, enraged, didn't hesitate. It sprang for her throat. Ilara threw herself sideways, falling to the ground. The rogue's jaws snapped shut where her neck had been, catching only her shoulder. Fire erupted from her collarbone as teeth tore through muscle. She screamed, but the scream turned into a snarl. She slammed her elbow back into the rogue's ribs, then drove her thumbs into its eyes. The animal bellowed in agony and thrashed, releasing her. It wasn't enough. The first rogue, the one with the broken snout, was already coming back. Ilara scrambled on her hands and knees, pushing herself between the attackers and the tiny silver cub, who was now frozen in terror. "Run!" she choked out at the cub, though she knew it was pointless. The two rogues, bloodied but furious, attacked at once. Ilara didn't try to fight. She did the only thing she could. She turned her back to them and curled her broken body over the small, whimpering cub, making herself a shield. Teeth and claws ripped into her. She felt a rib crack. A sharp, searing pain tore down her spine. She didn't make a sound. She just held on, her vision blurring, the world turning from white to grey to black. Her blood, dark and hot, stained the snow and matted the silver fur of the cub beneath her. Her last conscious thought was not of her pack, or of Alistair, or even of her own wasted life. It was a simple, fierce prayer. Please, let this be enough. Let him live. The forest went silent, save for the wind and the faint, terrified whimpers of the cub trapped beneath her unmoving body. The scent of blood was so thick it was a physical weight in the air. Alpha King Theron, of the Stonecrest Dominion, moved through the blizzard like a phantom, his massive black wolf form a shadow against the snow. His crimson eyes, the mark of the Alpha King's bloodline, scanned the carnage with cold fury. "My king!" a voice growled to his left. His beta, Kyle, shifted back into his human form, his breath pluming. The trail ends here. Rogues. 2 of them. And Theron didn't need him to finish. He could smell it all. The stench of the rogues, the familiar, terrifying scent of his own son's blood, and another scent, an unknown. Faint, female, and layered with the acidic tang of Omega submission and old, stale fear. He crested the ridge and froze. The scene below was a tapestry of violence. 2 large rogue wolves lay dead, their bodies torn and broken, and in the center, a small figure was curled into a protective ball. He recognized the flash of silver fur beneath her. Leo! The name was a crack of thunder. Theron was down the slope, in 3 bounds, shifting mid-air to land in his human form. He was a mountain of a man, clad in black leathers and fur, his presence an oppressive force that demanded obedience from the very air around him. He reached the figure and grabbed her by the shoulder to throw her off his son. The moment his skin touched hers, a jolt, like lightning striking a frozen lake, shot up his arm. It was hot, possessive, and utterly agonizing. Mine. The single word echoed in his skull, a primal command from his wolf that he hadn't heard in all his 30 years. He recoiled as if burned. Impossible. "My king!" Kyle was at his side, weapon drawn. "Is he?" "Quiet!" Theron commanded, his voice a low growl. He forced himself to ignore the searing brand on his hand. He carefully, almost gently, rolled the female body over. His son, Leo, stared up at him, covered in blood but, as Theron's frantic eyes confirmed, completely unharmed. The blood wasn't his. It belonged to the woman. "Father," the cub whimpered, shaking. Theron scooped up his 5-year-old son, pressing the boy's face into his fur-lined cloak. "You are safe, Leo. I have you." He turned his full attention to the woman who had saved him. She was a wreck. Her back looked like it had been put through a shredder. One shoulder was dislocated, her breathing shallow. She wore the thin, grey rags of an Omega. He could smell the Shadowfang pack on her, a weak, dishonorable pack led by the fool Alistair. "She's Shadowfang," Kyle spat, his suspicion immediate. "This is a trap, an assassination attempt. She used the boy as bait." Theron's eyes narrowed. He looked at the scene again. The two dead rogues. The woman who weighed nothing, her body a roadmap of old injuries, of starvation, and the rock, caked in blood and fur, still clutched in her frozen hand. "A trap?" Theron said, his voice dangerously soft. "With what, Beta? Her fingernails?" He pointed. "She killed them both, one with a broken snout. The other, she crushed its throat." He nudged the second rogue with his boot. "She's dying, Kyle, and she did it to protect my son." He looked down at the woman's face. It was pale, streaked with grime and frozen blood. Her lips were blue, but even unconscious, her features held a stubbornness that intrigued him. "Who is she?" Cale asked, lowering his weapon. "It doesn't matter who she is," Theron said, his voice hard. "It matters what she did." He was the Alpha King. His word was law. His territory was vast, his rule absolute. He was known for his cold pragmatism, for a justice that was swift and without mercy. He had treaties to maintain, an heir to protect, and a kingdom to run. And this Omega, this nobody, had just thrown his entire world off its axis. That jolt. He knew what it was. The fates had a sick sense of humor. To bind him, the Alpha King, to call this, a half-dead Omega from a rival pack. It was a political disaster, a weakness he could not afford. "Father," Leo whispered, peeking from the cloak. She saved me. The bad wolves came, and she fought them. She told me to run. She covered me." Theron's jaw tightened. The debt was blood-deep. His son, his heir, the future of the Stonecrest Dominion, was alive because this woman had decided to spend her last moments as a shield. He made a decision. It was pragmatic. It was the law, a life for a life. "She saved the bloodline," Theron declared, his voice leaving no room for argument. "The bloodline protects its own." He shrugged off his heavy outer cloak, a cloak worth more than a small village, and wrapped it around her broken body. He slid one arm under her knees and the other behind her back, lifting her as easily as he had lifted his son. The moment she was against his chest, the bond flared again, a possessive, molten fire that roared in his veins, demanding he heal her, protect her, claim her. He fought it back, his expression turning to stone. "Kyle, send word to the Citadel. Have Dr. Hayes prepare the private infirmary, and find out who this woman is. I want to know everything about the Shadow Fang Pax Omega." "My king," Kyle pressed, "what of your betrothal? Lady Seraphina?" "Lady Seraphina is not here," Theron cut him off, his eyes flashing red. "A life was saved. A life is owed. That is the law." He began the long walk back to the Citadel, his heir in one arm and his fated mate, a truth he would deny to his last breath, in the other. Ilara woke up to the scent of lavender and the feeling of warmth. She hadn't been warm in years. Her entire body was a dull, thrumming ache. But it wasn't the sharp, agonizing pain she'd fallen asleep to. She was clean. She was in a bed, under sheets so soft they felt like water. Her eyes flew open. Panic seized her. This wasn't the Omega Den. This wasn't the forest. The room was vast, with stone walls, a blazing fireplace, and furniture made of dark, polished wood. She was a prisoner. Alistair had found her. He'd dragged her back. This was some new, sick game before he finally killed her. She tried to sit up, but a scream died in her throat as her shoulder and back muscles seized. "Easy, child. You'll tear your stitches." The voice was kind. Ilara flinched, turning her head. A woman in a crisp white coat stood beside the bed, holding a tray. She had greying hair pulled into a neat bun and the kindest eyes Ilara had ever seen. She smelled human. Where am I?" Ilara's voice was a dry croak. "You're in the Stonecrest Citadel. "You're safe," the woman said, offering her a glass of water. "I'm Dr. Evelyn Hayes, the pack physician. You've been unconscious for 2 days." Elara drank, her mind racing. Stonecrest, the name was a legend, whispered in fear. The pack of the Alpha King, Theron, the ruler of all rulers. "Why?" she whispered, terrified. "Why am I here?" You don't remember?" Dr. Hayes asked gently. Images flashed in Elara's mind. Snow, yellow fangs, a small silver cub, and then an ocean of pain. "The cub!" Elara gasped, grabbing the doctor's arm. "The little one. Did he get away? Did they—" "He's fine," Evelyn smiled. "Completely unharmed. Thanks to you." The relief was so profound that Elara fell back against the pillows, tears welling. Thank the goddess. "You, on the other hand," the doctor continued, her tone more serious, "are a different story. You have 3 broken ribs, severe lacerations across your back and shoulders, a dislocated shoulder, and you were in the advanced stages of hypothermia and starvation. Elara, that's your name, isn't it? We found it on the Shadowfang registry." Elara flinched at the name of her pack. "Please, you can't send me back. He'll kill me. Alistair will kill me." "No one is sending you anywhere," a new voice said. The voice hit Elara like a physical blow. It was deep, resonant, and held an ocean of command. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with power. Alpha King Theron stood in the doorway. He was exactly as the legends described, impossibly tall, broad-shouldered, with night-black hair and eyes that held a feral, crimson glow. He dominated the room just by breathing. Dr. Hayes bowed her head. "Alpha King." "Leave us, Evelyn," he commanded. The doctor gave Elara a reassuring squeeze on the arm and quietly left, closing the heavy doors behind her. Elara was alone with the king. She trembled, pulling the sheets up to her chin. This was it. This was a power she'd never encountered. Alistair was a bully. This man was a god. He walked to the foot of her bed, his gaze analytical, cold. "You are Elara of the Shadowfang pack, an Omega." She nodded, unable to speak. "2 days ago, you saved my son's life." Elara's world tilted. His son? The cub? The silver cub was the heir? I didn't know," she stammered. I heard him." "I know," Theron said. "You saved the future of my dominion. I am therefore in your debt." He said the word debt like it was a curse. I don't want anything," she whispered, looking down. "I just want to be free. Please don't send me back to Alistair." "He will not touch you," Theron stated. It wasn't a promise. It was a fact. "Alistair has no power here. You are under my protection." He paused, walking to the window, staring out at the snow-covered mountains. "You have 2 choices, Elara." His voice was flat, all business. 1. You heal, and I grant you safe passage to the neutral territories in the south. You will be given gold, a new name, and you will be free. No one will know who you are. Elara's heart leapt. Free, truly free. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of. "Or?" she asked, sensing the other option. He turned, and for a second his crimson eyes seemed to burn. "Or you stay. You will be given a position in the Citadel. You will be a ward of the pack, protected by my name. You will never be cold or hungry again." It was a cage, a gilded one, but a cage. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you offer that?" "My son," Theron said, his voice clipped. "He's attached. He has asked for you. He feels he owes you a life debt. It would be beneficial for him to see that debt honored." Elara looked at him, truly looked at him. He was a king, but he was also a father. He was offering her a home to appease his child. But there was something else. A tension in the room, a strange pull she felt in her own chest, an echo of the jolt she'd felt in the forest. He was feeling it too. He took a step closer, and the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. She could smell him. Pine, winter air, and something uniquely male and powerful. Her inner wolf, a creature she thought long dead, stirred in the back of her mind, whining. Theron's jaw clenched. He visibly fought against something. "What's wrong?" she whispered. He looked at her, and his mask of cold control cracked. She saw a flash of raw, untamed fury. "The fates are cruel," he growled. "You are my mate, Elara of the Shadowfang." Elara's blood ran cold. "Mate? Him? This terrifying king?" "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. I'm an Omega. I'm broken." "It is possible, and it is true," he snapped. "I felt it when I touched you. You feel it now." She did. It was a humming under her skin, a recognition. "But," he continued, and his voice went back to ice, "it changes nothing." "What?" "I said it changes nothing," he roared, and the power in his voice made the glass of water on her nightstand tremble. "I am the king. I have a duty. I am politically betrothed to Lady Seraphina of the Silver Moon Pack. This alliance will end a century of bloodshed. It will secure my borders and protect my people. I will not jeopardize that for a... He stopped, but she heard the word he didn't say. "Omega." "My betrothal stands," he said, his voice flat. "The fates can be damned. I will not have a weak, unranked Omega from a pathetic pack as my Luna. It would shatter my dominion. I reject the bond." Elara felt the word reject like a physical slap. It was a pain worse than any Alistair had ever inflicted. It was a denial of her very soul. "So," she said, her voice shaking, but a new, cold anger rising. "Those are my choices. Be banished, or stay here as your dirty little secret." Theron's eyes narrowed. "You will stay. You will be my guest. You will heal. You will be here for my son. And you will watch me marry another woman. You will be silent. You will be grateful. That is the price for your life. That is the price for my sons." He turned to leave. "King Theron," she called out, her voice stronger now. He paused, his hand on the door. "You're right," she said, meeting his gaze. "The fates are cruel. They gave the kingdom's greatest hero to a man who is too much of a coward to accept her." Before he could move, she said, "And just so we are clear, I reject you." His eyes flashed pure red. He looked like he was going to tear her apart. But instead, he just stared at her, a look of shocked, grudging something. Then he turned and slammed the door, leaving her alone in the crushing silence. Elara healed. Dr. Hayes was a miracle worker, but the Stonecrest Pack's resources were the true magic. The food was rich, the broths were laced with healing herbs, and for the first time in her life, Elara's body wasn't fighting for scraps. She was moved from the infirmary to a large, comfortable room in the guest wing. It was, as she'd feared, a gilded cage. She had guards posted outside her door. For her protection, she was told. Theron was true to his word. He ignored her. He was cold, distant, and consumed with pack business. Elara only saw him at a distance, a formidable shadow striding down the halls, his betas and gammas struggling to keep up. But the bond was a living thing. It was a constant thrum under her skin, a low-level ache in her chest. She knew where he was in the citadel at all times. She felt his moods, his anger, his frustration, his crushing loneliness. And she knew, with infuriating certainty, that he felt hers. Her only visitor was the one person Theron couldn't deny, his son. Leo, the silver cub, was a bright, inquisitive boy. He would sneak away from his tutors and appear at her door. The guards, under a silent order from the king, would always look the other way. "They say you killed 2 rogues all by yourself," Leo said one afternoon, sitting cross-legged on her floor, playing with a wooden soldier. Kyle said they were huge. "I was scared," Ilara admitted, braiding a strip of leather for him. I didn't want them to hurt you." "You weren't scared," Leo said, looking up at her with his father's intense eyes. "You were brave." Father said bravery is being scared and doing it anyway. A pang went through her. "Your father is a wise man." "He's sad," Leo said, his voice suddenly small. Ilara stopped braiding. "Why do you say that?" "He's been sad since Mother died, but he's sadder now, and he's angry. He's always angry at the lady. The lady. Lady Seraphina, she's visiting." Ilara's blood ran cold. The betrothed. The next day she saw her. Lady Seraphina of the Silver Moon Pack was everything Ilara was not. She was tall, with hair the color of spun moonlight, and eyes as blue and cold as a glacier. She moved with the fluid grace of a predator, and the entire Citadel Guard seemed to be on edge around her. Ilara was in the library, one of the few places she was allowed to go, when Seraphina found her. "So," a silky voice drawled. "You're the stray." Ilara turned. Seraphina was leaning against a bookshelf, idly examining a priceless vase. "I am Ilara, a guest of the king," Ilara said, her voice steady. "A guest?" Seraphina laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "That's what he's calling you. How quaint." She glided closer, circling Ilara. "He's quite the sentimentalist, my Theron, saving a pathetic, half-dead Omega just because she tripped and fell in front of his son. It's touching, really. But the charity ends now." "I don't know what you mean," Ilara said, standing her ground. "Oh, I think you do." Seraphina's smile was all teeth. "I can smell it on you, the stench of the bond. You think you have a claim? You think because the fates made a mistake, you can stand in my way?" "I'm not standing in anyone's way," Ilara said. "The king has made his choice." "Yes, he has." Seraphina's hand shot out and gripped Ilara's chin, her claws just pricking the skin. "He chose his kingdom. He chose me. You are a temporary amusement, an embarrassment. You will be gone by the full moon, one way or another." "Take your hand off me," Ilara said, her voice low. "Or what, Omega? You'll bite me?" Seraphina shoved her backward. Ilara stumbled, crashing into a table. "Know your place," Seraphina hissed. "You're a bug beneath my boot, and I always crush bugs." Seraphina swept from the room, leaving Ilara shaking, not with fear, but with a cold, clear rage. She wasn't just a rival. She was a bully. She was Alistair in a silk dress. That evening, Kyle, the king's beta, sought her out. He'd been a silent, watchful presence, but now his face was troubled. "Lady Ilara," he said, bowing his head. "Just Ilara, please." "Ilara, Lady Seraphina's visit. It complicates things." "She threatened me," Ilara said bluntly. Kyle's eyes hardened. "She is volatile, but her pack's alliance is essential. The king is bound." "He's bound to a viper," Ilara shot back. "Perhaps," Kyle conceded. "But I didn't come here to talk about her. I came to talk about you, the rogues you fought." "What about them?" "It doesn't add up," Kyle said, pacing. "Rogues don't hunt in that part of the territory. It's too close to the Citadel. They know it's a death sentence. And they weren't starved. Dr. Hayes's autopsy showed they were well fed." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they weren't rogues. They were assassins. And they weren't just after Leo. They were after you." Ilara stared at him. Me? Why? No one even knew I was there. Exactly, Kyle said, his eyes dark. Unless someone knew you were coming. Someone who knew about the bond. Only the king, Alara started. The king, and anyone with a powerful seer, Kyle finished. The Silver Moon Pack has the Oracle of the High Mountain. If Seraphina knew you were Theron's fated mate before you even arrived, she might have arranged a little accident in the woods. One that would eliminate the king's heir and his destined mate all at once. Ilara's stomach turned to ice, and she could frame my old pack, the Shadow Fangs. Giving Theron a reason to wipe them out, Kyle nodded. Consolidating her power and his in one stroke. It's a brilliant plan. It only failed because you, a weak, unranked Omega, refused to die. A new, terrifying understanding dawned. Seraphina didn't just want her gone. She wanted her erased, and she was living under the same roof. I need, Ilara said, her mind racing. I need to learn to fight. Really fight. Kyle looked at her, surprised. I am not a victim, Ilara said, her voice hard as steel. I am not an Omega. I am the woman who saved the king's son. And I am the woman who is going to expose that silver-tongued monster for what she is. Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. Good, he said. The training pits are this way. Let's see what you're made of. For the next 2 weeks, Ilara lived a double life. By day, she was the quiet, healing guest, tending to the gardens with Dr. Hayes or reading to Leo. She endured the cutting remarks from Seraphina's entourage and the cold, dismissive glances from Theron, who was now permanently affixed to his betrothed's side. But by night, she was in the training pits with Kale. She was weak. Her stamina was poor, and she had no formal training. But she had something Kale hadn't seen in a long time: desperation. She learned fast, because she'd spent her whole life learning to anticipate a blow. You're too stiff, Kyle barked, easily sidestepping her lunge and tapping her on the ribs. I'm trying, she grunted, spinning. Stop trying to be strong. You're not, he said bluntly. Theron is strong. I'm strong. You are small. Be small. Be fast. Be smarter. He taught her how to use an opponent's weight against them, how to find an opening, how to use a dagger, not as a sword, but as an extension of her own will. She learned to disarm, to block, to kill. And all the while, the bond with Theron was a silent torment. She felt his frustration during his council meetings. She felt his self-loathing late at night when he was alone. And worst of all, she felt the burning, jealous rage that spiked through him whenever he saw her speaking with Kale. He was rejecting her, but he'd be damned if anyone else so much as looked at her. It was the height of his arrogance, and it fueled her determination. The breakthrough came a week before the full moon, the date set for the wedding. Kyle's scouts had been watching Seraphina's chief advisor, Lord Valerius. He's sloppy, Kyle told Ilara, meeting her in the moonlit courtyard. He thinks we're all fools, blinded by his mistress's beauty. He's meeting someone at the southern border tonight. A messenger. Alistair, Ilara breathed. That's my guess, Kyle said. We're going to catch him. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. You need me, Ilara insisted. You don't know Alistair. You don't know Valerius. I do. I know how men like that think. I know how they lie. And I'm the only one who can truly identify the scent of Alistair's personal guard. Kyle hesitated, but he saw the iron in her eyes. Fine. But you do exactly as I say. You are there to see, not to fight. They moved as shadows, 2 of Kyle's most trusted sentinels flanking them. The southern border was a desolate stretch of forest, miles from the citadel. They waited. Just after midnight, 2 figures appeared. Lord Valerius, wrapped in a dark cloak, and another man. Ilara's heart stopped. She knew that swagger. She knew that cruel laugh. It wasn't Alistair. It was his beta, Marcus, the one who had pulled Alistair off her, only to give her a final kick in the ribs for her trouble. "You have the payment?" Marcus growled. "The Alpha King is grateful for the Shadowfang's intel on the rogue problem," Valerius said, his voice slick. "This gold is for your Alpha's cooperation." "Cooperation? We did the dirty work. Those 2 wolves we gave you were our best trackers. And we get scraps." "You get to live," Valerius hissed. Lady Seraphina was disappointed. The job was incomplete. The heir lives. And the Omega, she lives. "How? You were told she'd be in that forest." "We didn't know she could fight," Marcus protested. "Alistair said she was nothing. How were we to know she'd kill 2 trained enforcers?" Ilara's hands clenched. Trained enforcers, not rogues. "It doesn't matter," Valerius snapped. "The plan has changed. The wedding is in a week. After the union, the lady will be Luna. She will convince the king that the Shadowfangs are a threat. Your pack will be annihilated. Alistair will be dealt with." Marcus paled. That wasn't the deal. The deal changed when your Omega interfered. Now take your gold and crawl back to your pathetic Alpha. Your days are numbered." Valerius tossed a heavy pouch at Marcus's feet and turned to leave. "Now," Kyle whispered. The sentinels dropped from the trees, surrounding the 2. Marcus roared and shifted, but Kyle was on him in an instant, his own shift faster, more powerful. He pinned the Shadowfang beta to the ground, his jaws at Marcus's throat. Valerius, a coward at heart, drew a sword, his hands trembling. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Oh, I think we do," Ilara said, stepping out of the shadows. Valerius's blood drained from his face. You're dead." "Not yet," Ilara said. She looked at Marcus, who was frozen under Kyle's weight. "Marcus," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "She's going to betray you. She's going to kill you all. Alistair, you, everyone. You were just a tool." "Lies!" Valerius shrieked. "Tell me, Marcus," Ilara continued, "does Alistair know that you were the one who told Valerius where I'd be running? That you were the one who suggested they use me as the final piece of the trap?" Marcus's eyes widened in terror. "I heard you, you know," Ilara whispered. "The night I ran. I heard you telling Alistair, 'Don't worry, she'll run north, into the king's land. The wolves will get her.' You sent me to my death." "Bind him," Kyle ordered his sentinels, nodding at Valerius. He eased his grip on Marcus. "She's right, Wolf. You've been played. Your only chance at survival is to tell the king everything. Testify against him. And her." Marcus looked from Valerius to Ilara. He was a brute, but he wasn't stupid. He knew a lost cause when he saw one. He shifted back, naked and shaking. "I'll talk," he panted. "I'll tell him everything. Just keep Alistair away from me. And her. Keep her away from me." They had their proof. The gold, the confession, the conspiracy. "It's over," Kyle said, a grim satisfaction on his face. "No," Ilara said, looking back toward the citadel. "It's not over. We have the truth. But he has to choose it." The great hall of the Stonecrest Citadel was prepared for the royal betrothal ceremony. Banners of the Silver Moon and Stonecrest packs hung from the rafters. Hundreds of alphas, betas, and envoys from allied packs filled the chamber. It was a show of power, the union of the 2 strongest territories on the continent. Theron stood at the dais, dressed in formal black and silver. He looked every inch the king, impassive, powerful, bored. Beside him, Seraphina was radiant in a gown of white fur and silver thread, smiling graciously at the assembled lords and ladies. "And now," the pack elder began, "do you, Alpha King Theron, and you, Lady Seraphina, come before this body too." "Stop!" The word echoed off the stone walls, silencing the entire hall. The heavy oak doors flew open. Elara stood in the doorway. She was not the trembling Omega. She was not the quiet guest. She was dressed in black leather training gear, her hair braided back, her face smudged with dirt from the forest. She looked like a warrior, and behind her stood Beta Kyle, 2 sentinels, and the bound, gagged forms of Lord Valerius and Marcus. "What is the meaning of this?" Seraphina shrieked, her mask of grace shattering. "Guards, seize her!" A few guards moved, but Theron held up a hand. The hall went utterly still. His crimson eyes locked on Elara. The bond between them crackled in the air, a live wire of pain, betrayal, and a fierce, undeniable pride. He looked at Kyle, then at the prisoners. "Beta Kyle." Theron's voice was lethally calm. "Explain." "My king," Kyle said, stepping forward. "We have uncovered a conspiracy to destabilize the Dominion, a plot to murder your son and heir, Prince Leo." A collective gasp went through the hall. "Lies!" Valerius screamed through his gag. "This woman," Kyle continued, pointing to Seraphina, "colluded with Lord Valerius and members of the Shadowfang pack. They staged the rogue attack on Prince Leo. They failed, thanks to Elara. Their plan was to frame the Shadowfangs, forcing you into a war to eradicate them, thereby seizing their territory and eliminating any rivals to her claim." The hall erupted. "This is an outrage!" Seraphina cried, turning to Theron. "My love, are you going to let this filth slander me? She is jealous. She is a liar. She wants you for herself." "She's not lying," Elara said, her voice clear and carrying. She walked forward, her gaze never leaving Theron's. "I was there. I was the rival she wanted eliminated. She knew, through her seers, that I was your mate. She arranged for me to be in that forest at the same time as your son. She wanted us both dead." She stopped 10 feet from the dais. She was addressing only Theron. "You are a king. You claim to rule by justice, but you have been blinded by ambition. You are about to ally yourself with the woman who tried to murder your child." The words hung in the air. Theron's face was unreadable. He looked from Elara to Seraphina. "Theron," Seraphina said, her voice dropping, becoming seductive, desperate. "Don't listen to her. Think of our alliance. Think of the power. We can rule together. This thing. She is nothing." "She is not nothing," Theron said, his voice quiet. He looked at Elara. He saw the strength in her, the steel, the fire. The woman who had killed 2 wolves with a rock. The woman who had stood up to him. The woman who had just exposed a plot that his own intelligence had missed. He saw the Luna he had been too arrogant and too frightened to claim. "You're right," he said to Elara. "I have been blinded." He turned to Seraphina, and for the first time she saw the full, unrestrained fury of the Alpha King. "You put your hands on my son," he growled. "No, Theron, it was a political necessity. He was a weak heir. Seraphina stopped, realizing her mistake. "And you," Theron continued, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, "you dared to harm my mate." He said the word. Mate. It was an admission. It was a declaration. Seraphina, cornered, dropped all pretense, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. She was supposed to die, she screamed, and pulled a dagger, pure silver, from a sheath hidden in her dress. She didn't lunge for Theron. She lunged for Elara. "If I can't have him, no one will." Elara didn't flinch. Kael had trained her well. She moved, not back, but forward, inside the lunge. She grabbed Seraphina's wrist, using her momentum to twist. Seraphina's arm snapped with a sickening crack. The dagger clattered to the floor. Elara slammed her palm into Seraphina's nose, breaking it, and shoved her to the ground at Theron's feet. The entire hall was in stunned silence. The Omega had just dismantled the most powerful alpha female in the North in 3 seconds. Theron looked down at his sobbing, bleeding betrothed. Then he looked at Elara, who was breathing hard, her eyes blazing. He stepped down from the dais. He walked past Seraphina as if she were a piece of trash. He stopped directly in front of Elara, close enough that she could feel the heat rolling off him. The entire world held its breath. He slowly reached up and touched her face, his thumb brushing a cut on her cheek. "The betrothal is broken," he declared to the hall. "The Silver Moon Pack has committed an act of war against the Dominion. Seize her. Seize her entire entourage." Guards swarmed Seraphina, dragging her away as she cursed his name. Theron turned his full attention back to Elara. The bond was a roaring inferno between them. "You were right," he said, his voice raw. "The fates were cruel. They gave me a gift I was too blind to see." "Theron," she whispered. "I reject my rejection," he said, a faint, dangerous smile playing on his lips. "I am Alpha King Theron of the Stonecrest Dominion, and you, Elara, are my fated mate. You are my Luna, and you are my queen." He knelt on one knee before her, in front of his entire court. "If you will have me." Elara stared down at the king. He was kneeling. To her, the woman who, 3 weeks ago, was a piece of property. She looked past him, at the hundreds of faces watching. She saw Kyle, who gave her a single, proud nod. She saw Dr. Hayes weeping with joy, and she saw, hiding behind a pillar, little Leo, who was grinning from ear to ear. She looked back at Theron. He wasn't a king. He was just a man. Her man. "Get up, Theron," she said softly. "A king only kneels to his queen." A chair, led by Kael, erupted through the hall. Theron stood, and the look in his eyes was one of pure, unguarded adoration. He pulled her to him and kissed her, a claiming that was both brutal and tender, sealing the bond in front of the entire world. But peace was short-lived. The news of Seraphina's arrest and the broken treaty spread like wildfire. The Silver Moon Pack was in chaos, but they were also proud. They refused to sue for peace, and Theron's armies mobilized for the war Seraphina had started. But Elara knew there was another, more immediate threat. "Alistair," she said, as Theron planned strategies with Kyle in the war room. "He's nothing," Theron dismissed. "A petty tyrant." "You don't understand," Elara insisted. "He's a coward, but he's an arrogant coward. He's lost his best beta, Marcus. He knows I'm here. He knows you're his only link to Seraphina's plan. And most of all, his property has been stolen. He will not let that stand. He will come here, thinking you are weak and distracted by the war with the Silver Moon Pack. He will demand me back." Theron's eyes flashed red. "Let him come. I will rip his throat out." "No," Elara said, putting a hand on his chest. This one is mine. I will not be your Luna. I will not be your queen, while that man still draws breath, believing he owns me." Theron argued. He raged. But he finally saw the steel in her spine. This was not about justice for the kingdom. This was about justice for her. "As you wish, my Luna," he finally agreed. Just as she'd predicted, a week later, Alistair of the Shadowfang Pack arrived at the gates of the Citadel. He didn't come with an army. He came with his 5 largest enforcers, swaggering as if he owned the place. He demanded an audience. Theron granted it in the main courtyard. Alistair strode in, his eyes oily as they scanned the wealth of the Stonecrest pack. He saw Theron on his throne and Elara standing beside him. He laughed. "Well, well, little Omega," Alistair sneered. "You clean up nice. I see you've been entertaining the king. Your service is commendable. King Theron," he said, bowing mockingly. "I am Alistair. I am here to reclaim my property. She's a thief, you see, stole herself from my pack. I am, of course, willing to overlook your transgression in using her. In exchange for a small border treaty, perhaps?" The entire courtyard was silent. Theron's fingers were gripping the arms of his throne, so hard the stone was cracking. Elara placed a hand on his. "I'll handle this." She stepped down from the dais. She wore her black training leathers. A simple steel dagger was at her hip. "Hello, Alistair," she said. "Come here, girl," he commanded, crooking his finger. "Your little game is over." "You're right," Elara said, stopping 20 feet from him. "It is. I am your alpha. You will obey me," he roared, his patience snapping. "You are my alpha," Elara said, her voice carrying in the cold air. "But I am no longer your Omega. I am Elara of the Stonecrest Dominion, and I am Luna of this pack." "Luna," Alistair's face went purple. He looked at Theron. "You'd make this broken." He didn't finish. He launched himself at her, shifting midair into a mangy brown wolf, his jaws aimed at her throat. The crowd gasped. Theron started to rise, but Elara shot him a look. "Mine." He sat back down, his whole body trembling with the effort of holding himself back. Elara didn't run. She stood her ground. Just as he was about to hit her, she dropped, sweeping his front legs out from under him. The massive wolf yelped, crashing into the stone ground. He scrambled up, confused, and lunged again. She wasn't there. She was fast. She was smart. She'd spent a lifetime learning to avoid his attacks. She ducked under his snap, grabbing the dagger from her belt. "I'm not the girl you beat, Alistair," she yelled. He came at her again, a roaring, snapping beast. She didn't try to meet his strength. She sidestepped, and as he passed, she drove the dagger hilt deep into his hamstring. He howled, his leg collapsing. He fell, shifting back into his human form, clutching his bleeding thigh. He stared at her in disbelief, his arrogance replaced by shock and pain. You hit me. I've been wanting to do that for 10 years, Elara panted. She walked over to him, yanking the dagger free. He screamed. She pressed the blade to his throat. "This is the part where you beg," she hissed. "The way I begged. The way I prayed for you to stop. Every night. But you know what? I'm not you. I won't kill a pathetic, bleeding coward." She stepped back. "I'm done with you." She turned to Theron. "My king. He has challenged a Luna of an alpha pack. He has attacked me on our soil. He has admitted to conspiracy. What is the judgment?" Theron stood. His voice was cold as the grave. "Alistair of the Shadowfang, you are stripped of your rank. You are stripped of your pack. You are marked as outcast, forbidden from ever shifting again. You will live out your days as a human, with no pack, no protection." He gave the order. Kyle and his men seized Alistair, dragging him, screaming, to the cells to await the painful marking ritual. Elara watched him go, and for the first time in her life, she felt free. She turned back to Theron, who walked down to her, his face a mask of awe. "You, Elara," he said, pulling her into his arms, "are terrifying and magnificent." "I learned from the best," she whispered, leaning her head against his chest. The war with the Silver Moon pack was short. When the news spread that Seraphina had tried to kill the king's son, and that their new Luna had single-handedly defeated 2 alphas, their pack elders, ashamed, ousted Seraphina's family, and begged for mercy. Theron, with Ilara's counsel, was firm but fair. The Shadowfang pack, leaderless, was absorbed into the Stonecrest Dominion. Ilara personally oversaw the integration, ensuring the Omegas were given places of honor and that the cycle of abuse was broken forever. Months later, Ilara stood on the balcony of the Citadel, looking out over her new home. Theron came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. Leo ran and hugged her legs. "What are you thinking about, my queen?" Theron murmured, kissing her shoulder. "I was just thinking," Ilara said, "about that girl in the forest, the one who was so cold, so broken. She thought she was using her last strength." She turned in his arms, her eyes bright. She was wrong. It wasn't her last strength. It was her first. And so, the Omega who was meant to be a sacrifice became the queen who was a savior. Ilara proved that true strength isn't about the power you're born with, but about the courage you find when you have nothing left. She saved a cub and found a kingdom. She faced her demons and found her destiny. And the Alpha King, who thought he needed an alliance, learned that what he truly needed was a mate with a heart of steel. What did you think of Ilara's story? Did you see that twist with Seraphina coming? Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of her journey was. If you loved this story of justice, karma, and unexpected love, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone else who needs a great story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories like this one coming your way, and you don't want to miss a single one. Thanks for listening.